Welcome, one and all, to the many interpretations of Dilophosaurus. Dilophosaurus is a very cool dinosaur. One of my favorite dinosaurs, actually. Of course, I have a lot of different favorite dinosaurs, but Dilophosaurus is one of them. It is a really cool dinosaur that kind of had its whole vision or appearance skewed by the media, of course, that being Jurassic Park, where it drastically looks incredibly different to how it was portrayed in the movie. So really, I think this is going to be a fun one to take a look at. It doesn't have as many interpretations as, say, other dinosaurs, but there's quite a sizable amount, enough to make a decently jam-packed video. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it, and yeah, let's do that. So firstly, we have the dinosaurs released in 1992. According to some of the lists I've looked up, Dilophosaurus does appear in this, but I haven't necessarily been able to find a clear-cut answer of where exactly Dilophosaurus shows up. Now, I've found this little section right here that has a bunch of dinosaurs as it kind of pans up, and this fella right here certainly looks Dilophosaurus-like. It has somewhat of a crest, it has that notch in its jaw. I think that is meant to be Dilophosaurus. I'm not too sure, but that is certainly the best one that I can find. So there's really not too much to say about its overall design. The crest is pretty small, of course, assuming this is Dilophosaurus, and it's pretty shrink-wrapped, but that's pretty much the most I can say about that. If it is Dilophosaurus. I hope it is, but I don't know. And then after that, we have where the animal was basically popularized, that being the Jurassic franchise. It has a plethora of different depictions across all of the different Jurassic media, of course starting off in the first Jurassic Park film, where it's incredibly small. It possesses a frill that kind of expands out as it's threatening its prey or threatening something that's afraid of, and it spits venom, of course. Now, all of that is very different to the real-life Dilophosaurus. Now, I've said many times that Jurassic Park is incredibly accurate for its time, but I've also said at the same time that they do take creative liberties every so often, and Dilophosaurus is one of those creative liberties, because actually, in Michael Crichton's original novel, the Dilophosaurus is far more accurate. The size is a lot closer, and that's about it. It also spits venom, but just the size is a lot more accurate. Now, of course, there is a lot of speculation that this Dilophosaurus is simply a young one, and every single Dilophosaurus that we've seen afterwards, such as the ones in Camp Cretaceous or the ones in Dominion, there's a theory that those are younger ones, and that's my favorite thought process. Clayton Fiordi also pointed out that once they pass the Dilophosaurus enclosure in the first film, you do kind of hear howling in the distance that sounds incredibly different to the kind of chirping that the Dilophosaurus in the movie has. So it's possible that this is just a young version of the overall animal, and I personally think that's something they should run with. I think in the future we should see an adult Dilophosaurus. I think that would be a very fun twist, and I think it would be just cool to see. Anyway, let's speak a little bit more about its design. It does have the key characteristic of Dilophosaurus, that being the double crest on top of its head. I think it looks really cool here, and it does have a little bit of that notch. Dilophosaurus did have somewhat of a notch in its skull, and when this guy snarls and it has that. I like how brightly colored its frill is when it expands. And I love the way that this little animatronic moves, or the little animatronic / puppet type thing. I think it moves so fluidly, and I think they absolutely nailed it in the first movie. Now, we might as well get a little bit into why the Dilophosaurus looked the way that it did in this movie. And as I mentioned, it's because they took some creative liberties every so often. And as far as I can tell from everything I've gathered, there's a few different reasons as to why that was. First of all, it differentiated it from the other theropod dinosaurs. Velociraptor was already decently big in the movie. Tyrannosaurus Rex was also huge. So they incorporated the Dilophosaurus and just made it smaller. If they just adapted it from Michael Crichton's, then it would just be massive too, and you would just have a lot of decently big theropods in the movie. This one kind of showed a different side of it, like small dinosaurs could mess you up too. Another is to kind of play into the theme that, man's dominion over nature doesn't really pan out. Like, they kind of did too much too quick. This is something that was definitely covered a lot more in the novel, but they were cloning things and they didn't fully understand what they were cloning until it was already made. In the case of Dilophosaurus, they cloned this, they didn't know what they were making, and they didn't know it had venom until after it had already hatched and everything. And so that just kind of shows just how in the dark they truly were, and they were just trying to push it out into the park too quickly. So that kind of shows the ignorance that the people of the park and Hammond and all that truly had in the movie. And another could very well be budgetary reasons as far as the size goes. That frill and venom is definitely creative choices. Venom specifically is from the novel, but it could be that they didn't necessarily have the budget to make a giant animatronic or more CGI models for bigger Dilophosaurus. So it could be a variety of different things. I'm definitely not going to blame the Jurassic Park movie for doing it the way that they did, because they did create a pretty iconic dinosaur because of that. One that certainly does have a chokehold on the real world. Really, very much a chokehold. There's a museum in Fruita, Colorado that I've been to a couple of times called Dinosaur Journey. And they have a giant Dilophosaurus, mechanical Dilophosaurus. It's an animatronic. And it has a little fun thing that you can experience. If you walk onto a bridge, eventually it'll spit water at you, very much in line to spitting venom at you. And that's in a museum. So the Dilophosaurus, whether that's based on the novel or the movie, either way, it shows how much Jurassic Park has had an influence on dinosaur things in general. It's kind of weird that it took all the way until Dominion for it to show up again, because it's had a lasting impact. We see it in every single toy line. They always release a Dilophosaurus. It's weird that it shows up so sparse, all things considered. It also does show up in Jurassic Park the game. There's a lot of them, and their colors are a bit different. There's a lot more red, and the same pattern doesn't show up in its frill. I don't know what the plan of that was. I don't know if they just stylistically made it that way to differentiate it. But because this is the same island and it's the same animals. I'm not too sure what the goal was, but they do look different, and I think that the red is very striking and cool to see. And then in Jurassic Park Builder, it's basically all of the games have the very basic shape or the basic idea of the Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus, that being the smaller version, frill. Just what mainly differs is the coloration that was used. In Jurassic Park Builder, I really like how striking and saturated those green colors are, as well as how brightly orange that frill is. And in Jurassic World, the game, as you level it up, get to 31 to 40, it gets some exaggerated features here, and the bright colors I think are so cool to see. And then again, Jurassic World Alive keeps the whole basic idea of the actual Dilophosaurus with its design. There's also Lego Jurassic World the game, and as far as Lego minifigures go, I know that I say I'm always a fan of them. I'm not the biggest fan of the Dilophosaurus, and that's mainly because it just kind of feels like the Lego Velociraptor, but with just a different molded head, essentially. So I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. I don't like how neon green it is, but it's its own thing. It's fine. Then we move on to dinosaurs on Earth. Then and now. So we get a little Dilophosaurus with very interesting and striking colors, with the darker greens contrasted with the lighter greens, and a kind of brightly yellow yellow colored crest. Words escape me today. Its wrists are breaking, but this is so far the most accurate one that we have seen so far, technically, especially when you keep that crest into mind. But then we will move on to extreme dinosaurs. We get an anthropomorphized Dilophosaurus along with other anthropomorphized animals. So they're basically humans with dinosaur characteristics. So he basically has a human body. His name's Ridge. I can't remember if I said that, but he has a human body, absolutely shredded, and he has the two crests. Of course, that's very important. Dilophosaurus does translate to double-crested lizard, I believe. They're not lizards, by the way, but that's what it translates to. Then in When Dinosaurs Roamed America, we have one of the best looks at this animal that I still feel holds up very well today. It is a bit shrink-wrapped, but it seems that the hands, for the most part, are pretty good. The skull, I think, looks fantastic, and the crests, I think, look great. The colors also stand out quite significantly to me. I like the little bit of the contrast with the darker stripes and the lighter base coloration, as well as a little bit of counter shading going on. The sounds are also something that stand out to me. They're very metallic and kind of mammalian in screeching. They're basically roars. Roars, as I've mentioned before, dinosaurs couldn't roar. I said that in the T-Rex video, and I think a lot of people misinterpreted what I meant by that. Roaring is a mammalian thing, and even at that, not a lot of mammals can do it. Most animals lack the capability to roar. That includes crocodiles today and birds. Birds can't roar either. They make their own set of complex noises. Dinosaurs likely couldn't roar. That's not to say that they were mute. They could likely make noises. What is most likely is that, much like modern day crocodilians, they could force air through their esophagus and produce these kind of like guttural bellows, or something that you can mainly feel rather than hear. So that's just something to keep in mind. Roaring is that's a very limited mammal thing. Moving on to dinosaur train, I think that they keep the whole feel and shape of Dilophosaurus pretty well. I'm not a big fan of the colors on this one. I don't think that they really contrast too well, but I think that the skull and the crest, I think they pulled that off really well. Then prehistoric 2010, again, something that stands out the most with this design are the colors. The basic shape seems pretty decent too. A lot bigger. Dilophosaurus was big in life. And I like the contrast with the brighter crest contrasted with the kind of duller colors. I think that always looks awesome. Kind of leans into the fact that could have possibly been used as a form of display for the animal. So I always love seeing something like that. Its hands are breaking though. Always sad to see an animal that wants to break its own wrists. But other than that, I think this is a pretty decent design. Earth. The making of a planet. This one also looks pretty decent. I don't really like how small the crest is, but we don't know too much about the crest. The crest that has been found is pretty damaged, but I think the consensus is that it had a pretty large crest, but it could be an example of sexual dimorphism, so maybe the females had smaller crests, or maybe the males had smaller crests, because with cassowaries, the females' crests are larger. Who knows? But I don't know. I do typically like seeing the larger crests. I think that looks incredibly awesome on Dilophosaurus. And these colors look kind of cool. But I do want to point out that the narrator said that Dilophosaurus was small. Not true. Maybe small compared to T-Rex or Giganotosaurus or Spinosaurus, but it was by no means small. It was taller than me. I'm 6'2". I think it had a maximum height of around 8 feet. So that's pretty tall, all things considered. That's like a Halo Elite. And those guys are tall. Then Gigantosaurus. This one definitely does take its influence from Jurassic Park, something that we haven't really seen too much yet, which is crazy. But in the fact that it has the frill. Its crest is also localized mainly on the nose, and it has a pretty much solid green color with that counter shading going on. Very fun design for the show that it's in. Then Turok, I think, is a very fun one. It is closer in size to the real-life Dilophosaurus, and I think it's so interesting how the crests kind of go out to the side like that. That's definitely different and not something I've seen yet before. When I was looking at it like this, it kind of looked like it was like a Carnoraptor or something. It kind of looked like a Carnotaurus because of the way that those crests look. I think this is a very fun one. I like how slender it is, and it seems like it'd be terrifying to face. Then Jurassic the Hunted keeps that Jurassic Park influence. Not too much I can say. They added a few spikes. The frill is, very much emphasized, and it does spit venom as well. They weren't venomous, too. I don't know if I mentioned that, but Dilophosaurus was not venomous. We don't have any evidence of venom in any dinosaur in the fossil record, and Dilophosaurus definitely wasn't one of them. Primal Carnage, I think, did a pretty decent job at that. You do get some different skins that you can apply to the Dilophosaurus. Some have larger crests, some have smaller ones. The coloration that you get, I think, looks fantastic as well as the patterns, and the animations I think are pretty solid too. So that's another solid portrayal. But definitely one of my favorites so far is Prior Extinction, of course, the Roblox game. This looks so cool. A lot of the different colors that you can give this one looks fantastic, and look how massive that crest is. It has a decently slender build without being too shrink wrapped. And I just think that they absolutely killed it. This is a fantastic one right here. I, of course, have to mention Path of Titans. While it's not in the official game, Primordial Tyrants have released a mod for it. One of my all-time favorite mods from Path of Titans. In fact, I made a video about some of my all-time favorite Path of Titans mods. And, of course, I put Dilophosaurus on the thumbnail because I just love this mod so much. I think the animations are great. The sounds are very fun to hear and definitely differentiate it from the rest of the dinosaurs in the game. I think the crests look great. Their overall build looks great. Everything matches up, I think. And the variations you can give them, I think, look solid too. There's one that actually you get the option to give it feathers. Now that's certainly a debate. We don't have any direct confirmation that Dilophosaurus possessed feathers. However, it is speculated that they did. A fossil had been found of a sitting dinosaur that it was imprinted, and the evidence for feathers were there. It was the same general size as Dilophosaurus and could be within the range that Dilophosaurus lived. So it's not confirmed that was Dilophosaurus, but some do speculate that it was. So, as in terms of feathers, it's not really something that I'm giving extra points to, even though I'm not giving any points at all for this thing. But it's just something that's interesting to think about. Who knows if they had feathers? Always fun to think about. Then the Isle, I think, killed it with both Legacy and Evrima. Legacy definitely had the very basic shape of Dilophosaurus down, and it looked fantastic. As well as Evrima, the most recent, it was added recently. I think that it also looks really good. The animations are solid. The crest looks pretty fun. They did give it some sparse feathering or quills, see to the previous when I talked about previously with that, and I think it looks really good. Ark Survival Evolved, I'm not a fan of. Again, I have to say this every once in a while. I do know that these aren't meant to be the true dinosaurs, but they are still designs, and I'm still allowed to not like a design. I'm not a fan of this one. It very much does have its Jurassic Park influence with it, and the crest is very interesting to see. But the frill. It looks fine. Baldur's Gate 3 has a very gnarly and sinister looking Dilophosaurus with some really cool red coloration and kind of a little bit more brightly colored red crests. Also looks awesome, has the quills or spikes pointing out, kind of like interlocking teeth, which is certainly different to what we know of Dilophosaurus. Yeah, very fun to see. It talks too. Paleopines looks awesome. This might be my favorite one that I've seen from Paleopines so far. That really looks like Dilophosaurus. Set firmly in the Paleopine style. A lot of, same basic thing. The colors look great. They opted to give it feathers. The crests look fantastic. The kind of slenderness of it looks really good. It just looks really good. Not much else I can say. It looks fantastic. And finally, Prehistoric Kingdom. Love it. Love everything about it. This was by far one of my favorite additions to the game. I especially love this gray one with the purple crest. I think it looks so cool. The other ones, especially the one that has more of a deserty color, also look fantastic. Their skeletons look great. They're huge and would be terrifying to see in real life, and they really capture Dilophosaurs very well. By far one of my favorite animals in the game. And there we have it. That is a good portion of the many interpretations of Dilophosaurus in media. This is another fun one to make. Dilophosaurus is such a cool dinosaur. I hope it's one that we see a little bit more in media. However, I do want to see it as the real Dilophosaurus more so than anything else. Why? Because the real Dilophosaurus is just awesome. Look at that. How can you not say that's awesome? Incredible. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.